Here we go. And a very good evening, everybody, and welcome to a Lyceum night coming to you from the Paul Christian Spiritualist Church on the south coast of the UK. Great delight to welcome back to our virtual platform tonight the lovely Kerry McLeod. Hello, darling. How are you?
Hello. I'm very well, thank you. We're in Scotland, so it's rather chilly up here, a tad cooler than it is where you are.
What have we got? We've got 6 degrees down here,
yeah,
so
probably
zero.
Probably near the zero.
Oh well, get plenty of wood on the fire and a wee something. And we have the lovely Phil Dykes. Good evening, Phil.
Good evening, Lawrence. It's an absolute pleasure to be here as well. I wondered where you were going then with the lovely.
I was going to say you got a lovely too.
I did.
I was special.
I was just thinking, what's he after?
I don't know. I'm just banking some for later. So yeah, absolutely wonderful to be back in your company again, even though it is on this virtual arena. But yeah, it is great to hook back up again. We're talking tonight on the importance of commitment within our spiritualism. This was prompted. We do various courses here and other places, and it's becoming very apparent very quickly that it's a common thing now that you may start off with 10 people signed up. And by the end of the course, no matter how long, you normally end up with like 5 or 6. And it is frustrating. It is frustrating. I cast my mind back when I used to sit in development circle, and at that time I was working nights. So if I'd been working the night before the circle, I would get home at 6 in the morning, and I would think, yeah, I'm not going to be up for 2 o'clock. Well, 2 o'clock, there I am, maybe a bit bleary-eyed, but I'm there. I'm sat there. So, your experiences in your past with your commitment to the other world?
I think when it comes to commitment, especially development circles and that training, I think you have to be 100% there. I remember sitting with the gentleman who started with me, John Gilbert, and he said, the only excuse that you can't be here is that you're dead. And I was about to answer, and he says, but then again, you'll be a contact, so you will be here. Yeah. So, and we used to come back off holiday. We used to cut holidays short just to be part of that, because it was a privilege to be asked into these circles. So when we see things today, and like you said, where we've got the numbers, then by the end they've diminished, you just think to yourself, where is that commitment? Where is that dedication to that development and understanding and knowledge that we are looking to master and understand and gain that spirituality about?
I think when I was developing very similar to Phil, and actually as I'm thinking about commitment, it comes in a number of different ways. You've got the commitment to, or let's put it first person, I have the commitment to my own development and whether I make it back for circle or whether I cut an annual leave vacation short or not, to be able to be there. We know that people work shifts and they have family commitments, but if they're there every time they can be, then that's commitment. But we've also got commitment to sitting for other mediums, and that isn't always seen. When we started speaking to some students who probably hadn't understood or known about the home circle as much as we do here, and probably the people that are watching, the first question we were asked was, why would you spend time sitting for another medium?
I remember that, yeah.
And they couldn't grasp why you would sit, for why I would sit, and you and Phil and likewise your watchers would sit for another medium. Well, commitment to the spirit world isn't just about our own development. It's about the development of other people who are developing different abilities, different spiritual abilities, in order to be able to serve the spirit world in different ways. And I know I'm in Scotland just now at my dad's, and both my dad and I sat for a fantastic trance and physical medium, a man called Jock MacArthur. And we used to sit in circle for him, finish work early or cut holidays short to be able to sit for him. And that it was not even thought about as to missing it. We would pull all the stops out to get there. And I suppose that's just two different levels of commitment to spirituality, mediumship and spiritualism. You've got the commitment, which you and I, Laurie, understand, and probably many, and I know Phil appreciates it too, is the commitment to keeping the doors of our churches open. That's an enormous level of commitment there.
Yeah, very true. And yeah, fascinating, all these different reflections of that one word, the commitment side. And yet, sitting for other mediums' development used to be commonplace. People would just do it. Leslie Flint, direct voice, I mean, his circle sat with him for years, the same people, not to develop their own abilities, but to enable that wonderful, you imagine direct voice, how amazing would that be? Absolutely wonderful to hear that again, and to not only marvel at the application of it by constructing the voice box as different and disassociated from the medium, but what knowledge and what understanding was brought through as well. And that's the most important thing.
It is. And I think sat in circles such as that, and when we were asked this question of what do we get from it, why would you do that, I had to take a breath and just think for a minute, because I just thought to myself, how is somebody asking this? Because as you sit within that circle, especially for somebody like Leslie Flint, you're going to receive the most wonderful education and interaction with these people from the spirit world, giving you insights that you can't find in books, and it's firsthand. So that, to me, even just the thought of being able to do that, and I know Leslie's not with us anymore, but the thought of being able to do that today excites me, because what we're going to understand, what we're going to learn, where's it going to open our minds to, and to be dedicated to that shouldn't be something that's difficult. It should be an exciting, and there should be, it's that time of the week and that day of the week we've got, that would be a big, it's almost like looking for the annual holiday, but you've got it every week.
And I think that's part of what isn't recognized as the spiritual development and mediumistic development that happens in every sitter, because you're exposing yourself to the spirit world and those spiritual understandings and learnings. And when we were sitting in this for other mediums, and we do sit in circle now, we were sitting once a week, we now sit twice a week, because the power that's generated and that sense of being part of something is incredibly addictive in a way, and feeling included in the development of somebody's mediumship and seeing the progress there, and knowing that in some way that small amount of time, and it is an hour once or twice a week, is a small amount of time to be able to spend helping the spirit world develop one of their mediums in whichever capacity that they're looking to.
Yeah, definitely. Just being part of all of that. I do wonder, and I do hope fervently, that the home circle is going to make a resurgence. We need the discipline, we need the understanding, we need the setup for it. I'm not betraying confidences here. I was called out once because some people I knew were sitting together, and they've opened a portal in the next door neighbour's lounge, and it was just a complete mess when you got over there. There was no discipline, there was no formula to it, there was no intent. And it's just like, the home circle can be magical when it's set up under the proper conditions. You've got to have the intent. Why are you sitting? You've got to have that discipline. You've got to have that commitment.
Yeah.
I mean,
that home circle you just mentioned, let's talk about, or we can talk about any form of mediumship. We're going to sit in that circle to be in the presence of the spirit world, to give our power, our love to that unseen world. And for me, just the thought of being in that power is a privilege. But as we're developing these gifts, there seems to be this understanding today when we sit in these home circles, all these phenomena, all these experiences happen. But for me, it's just about sitting in the power. Then when that circle or when that medium goes somewhere, that's when we see the real true ability shine. It's about building the power and that blend with the spirit world. But as was said to us just recently, and again, I might get myself in trouble here, well, what do we get out of it? What do we see? What's the point of doing that? I can do that by myself at home. And I think to myself, well, to be part of a collective, and if we look at history like the Skull Circle, Leslie Flint, and many other mediums, the phenomena that's taking place through years of sitting. I mean, some of these circles sat for 4 or 5 years and nothing was happening. Then all of a sudden it did. That shows the commitment that they used to have. And trying to get somebody to sit these days for a number of weeks seems to be a little bit of a hard work. And we know people are busy in their lives and there's all kinds of things that happen. But actually making that decisive decision and having an intent to sit for understanding, compassion, empathy, knowledge of the spirit world and what they can teach us, for me, that's priceless.
It's a spiritual offering, isn't it?
It is.
The circle offers their time and their spiritual power to the spirit world and the medium. The medium offers, gives their offering to the spirit world. I remember asking Jock in the earlier days, why do you sit, Jock? What do you get from this? And he said, my reward is in the cabinet, doing the demonstration where I've trained myself to be so out of the way that the loved ones get to speak, that the controls get to offer guidance. Not philosophy and how wonderful it is following the seasons and seeing the leaves fall from the trees and the wind blow. Not that. What I experienced was control, guide, direct to medium instructions. We used to receive instructions that said, okay, next time I need this to happen. We actually received instructions about what the circle needed to do. And in order to do that, the medium had to sit and get themselves out the way. And that happens in the home circle. So that's where that development between the medium and the spirit world happens, so that when it comes to demonstrations, the mediums know where the medium has developed themselves to a point where they're not needed. This is why we beg the question of, and it may be going a bit transgentle, but if mediums want to be trance mediums, my question would be, why do so many people want to be trance mediums if they don't remember anything? If they've trained themselves to a point where they're completely out the way, that they don't remember it, why do so many people want to do that?
Yeah, that's true. This question, funnily enough, has been bouncing around in the ether for the last couple of weeks. We're just going to do a quick couple of hellos. I don't want to say hello to Belinda because she's in burning hot Sydney, which is outrageous. You should come back to the UK and suffer in the cold like the rest of us, Belinda. But good morning to you, darling. Lovely Marion, hello, sweetie. Angela, hello. And Betty, good evening, my darling. Nice of you to join us. But yeah, going back to the trance side of it there, I think it's fair to say, here we go, this is Phil going to put his foot in it, and Lawrence is going to put his foot in it. So, Kerry, you're there to pull us out, all right? I think it's fair to say that...
Nothing.
Oh, Damn. I think it's fair to say one of the issues that face us as a movement of spiritualism is a lot of things have got watered down over the years. A lot of information has been lost. A lot of practices and standards have been dismissed. People are very good at saying, oh, we don't need this anymore. But I always say, if you're going to take something away, you need to replace it with something with equal or, if not greater, value. But that's the bit that misses. That's the bit that misses. I did an interview yesterday and I was recanting a tale. I was fortunate in my early development. I was sat with a lot of the old school mediums we lovingly referred to, and there was this beautiful story, and I know it was true. I didn't experience it, but I know it was true because they would not lie about this. They held the other world in greatest of reverence, and they used to sit together in circle, all the old school mediums, unlike today's world where everybody is trying to undercut each other and self-promote over. They would sit in circle regularly together for the other world, not for their own benefit, for the other world. And they were going into somebody's house one night, and they were going down the side alley, and there was a tall hedge there, and it was very dark. And one of them, my old circle leader, Margaret Clawton, who was a very fearsome Yorkshire lady, she used to terrify me, but she was a brilliant teacher. And they were going down this path, and he was going, oh, come along, spirit, light the way for us. And guess what happened? The way lit up. You know, this light just appeared. I know that was true. I would love to have experienced it, because I think a big thing in our movement that we miss is the actual experience. We can recant tales. We can talk about the pioneers and physical circles, etc. But, you know, spiritualism, when you have that experience of the other world movement around you, that is like, yeah, that's undeniable.
I think you're right. There's countless stories about lights, and go to the pioneers and wonderful, inspiring stories that have been accounted and very true. You've got yourself in trouble. I'm going to dig myself really into trouble. You've mentioned a particular word twice, movement. I don't see movement. I see a stagnation. And you've hit it on the head, because we're not having these experiences. They're not commonplace like they were yesteryear. Yes, there's some really good mediums out there, don't get me wrong. And I know within the home circles that are not public, there's some amazing things happening. But the movement, something has to move forward. And it's really good we're having this debate about commitment, because that standard of commitment, you can.
Movement doesn't always have to be forwards.
Well, it can be backwards,
or
sideways, or whichever. But for me, we should be inspiring.
I am trying, Lauren.
You are trying. She's trying. She's got a big ladder to get us out. But again, it's one of those things that we have to look at ourselves at the moment. What are we representing? Where are we going with this? What are we achieving? What are we doing in a community? How are we inspiring people? Because that story you've just talked about will inspire many, and they'll probably run to Google or books and things like this to find an education. Well, we should be, with commitment and dedication to sitting for that unseen world, because that's what really a circle was about, sitting for that unseen world, giving our love. If that was happening today, then I'm sure we'd be having these experiences. And just because I don't hear about them doesn't mean they're not happening. But I think the more people that sit for the right reasons, we will start to have these experiences again. That unseen world hasn't gone anywhere. They're still wanting to communicate. They're still wanting to lead us forward. My question will be, are we listening to that intent? Are we following that intent? Or are we as individuals, as you said, undercutting, underdoing, trying to get somewhere as individuals instead of working together? I think that's what needs to happen today. There should be more people coming together, helping and creating a harmonious atmosphere for the spirit world, a safe environment for mediums to work as well. It's important. Some of the things we're hearing from students that have gone to certain places, and again, no mention of places or names, but I wouldn't go to a seminar to be insulted. I wouldn't want to be called names or anything like that, or ridiculed in front of people. I think there needs to be a real big check-in to what is happening today, what's happened to this movement, and what is happening under that umbrella of spiritualism. For me, I'm very passionate about it. I believe in the spirit world and trying to be harmonious and trying to help as many people as we can. I think that's where we're lacking today. I think there's too many people out there for themselves, and I could be shot down for that, but we're trying to do our bit in our corner, in our world, in our lane, and that's what we're trying to do.
Anything from you, Kerry, or are we all right at the moment? Do we not need rescuing?
Can we be rescued from the truth?
No.
Do we need to be rescued from the truth? It might be controversial, but we do know that you gave a story there about you believe it happened, but it didn't happen to you. And you absolutely believe that it was true. And we have, if you go to Gordon Higginson's book, is it On the Side of Angels?
Yes.
He talks about during the war how he followed a bouncing light.
That's right, yeah.
And he didn't die.
Yeah.
There are other accounts of people following lights, whether it be, I know there's all sorts of understandings, angelic realms, extraterrestrial realms, the spirit world. It matters not. It's not of this physical world. Then if that is to be believed, and it has to be, because spiritualism is based on the pioneers and the stories. But if you speak to some of the people now that knew the pioneers, that are in many ways pioneers themselves now, they'll say things haven't really changed.
Yeah.
There was always this not working together, this cliques in one place, and perhaps if another group or church or medium or community didn't fit in, they were ostracized and in some way undermined and spoken badly of. And it is happening. We can speak truthfully that we know some of the people who decide to train with us are treated really badly by other people claiming to be spiritual medium tutors. And it's awful, because we're then having to spend time building these potential ambassadors for the spirit world back up, because they're being seen as commodities. They have the commitment, they have the discipline, and they also have the ability and the potential to be really, really good mediums, whether it be altered states or mental mediums. But they're being undermined, they're being badly spoken to, they're being embarrassed. That's not what the spiritualist movement was about. And it's maybe not about, well, it used to always be like that. Perhaps it doesn't make it any more right. But what can we do that involves discipline, commitment, and honesty to move the movement forward?
Yeah.
We can't afford to go backwards anymore.
In fact, I will jump in there very quickly before Lawrence comes in. Wasn't it in Leslie Flint, one of the Independent Voice seances, where Estelle Roberts came and spoke?
She did.
I think it was 1976, I'm paraphrasing, but I think I'm right on that, where there was a recording where it says that the spiritualism needs to look back and needs to move forward, needs to make changes, unless
learn from the past.
That's right, learn from the past, because that discipline and that way forward and mediumship is being lost. And we're now almost 50 years since then.
Can I add something else in, Laurie, before you start?
Yeah, carry on. Before I start.
Before you respond to this area. If you look at spiritualism is about a religion, faith, science, and spirituality. It's about all of it encompassed, and philosophy all coming together. There's been so many steps forward in the realms of consciousness. And I know a lot of people want to term consciousness as new agey stuff. It absolutely isn't if it's done in a scientific way. If we look at, not to get too technical, but if we look at quantum physics, it is an umbrella now for probably 2 handfuls, maybe more, different types of physics on the quanta level. And some of those are beginning to explain why the world is the way it is, and why we can't always go on traditional physics because it's based on the observed universe. But what about the unobserved universe? We can't just rely on speculation. Some of those physicists that are looking at consciousness now are incredibly, what's his name? Chris
Logan. He's a mathematician.
Not Logan. Is it Lagan?
Langan.
Chris Langan. He's got an IQ of greater than Einstein, according to some of the tests he's done. And he understands consciousness. He's a scientist, but he also accepts that energy cannot be destroyed. Therefore, there is an intelligence that he calls the whole. Sounds very familiar, yes?
Mm-hmm.
He calls it God. Sounds very familiar. And he explains it. He's got this theory that explains how life after death, the spirit world, other realms, and science can, oh, we've lost our picture.
Lost that picture. We'll be back in a second.
Can come together. Now, isn't that what spiritualism's been looking to do for over 100 years?
Yeah.
Just be able to come to link science and religion and faith and philosophy together. I think we're probably heading into an era where there might be some major breakthroughs. Spiritualism has to take account of that and move forward.
It's your turn to help me out now. I think it was 1652 where the Frenchman can you remember?
Descartes.
Talked about, well, spiritualism hasn't moved, the understanding of it hasn't moved on since 1652, the understandings of spirit communication back then. So what we've got to look at now is where we're moving to. And Chris Langham speaks about consciousness, our boundary of the mind, where we look at those static boundaries like time and the universe, where we can only see so far. And as we know, time is man-made. We've got to look past these things, look to the form of creation, and through consciousness, we can tap into those elements. And what we're now discovering, and myself and Kerry have had conversations about this, and even when we sit in the power, we see things and experience things that excite us, because then it's like, well, how did that happen? What does that mean? And it's that thought, those experiences that create a reality, a spiritual reality beyond what is measured. So again, consciousness and spirituality go hand in hand. And Chris Langham speaks about that divine creation, that divine creator that we can tap into, because he firmly believes in his form of God, his source, but he's very open to discussion and debate on this topic and how he puts mathematical equations and quantum physics together and understands it and gets you to look at certain aspects of consciousness. And again, in a way, he's a very spiritual person, because he's looking at all kinds of different religions, ways of life, and he quotes these things and talks about them with knowledge. So it's interesting how minds are moving today. And I think in some ways, spiritualism has got to follow, has got to look at science, got to look at the philosophies that are coming out now, because I know from people that we might meet around the world, online and in person, is they're looking for more. They're looking for a spirituality that encompasses so many different things, whether it's fact, fiction, or a belief. They're looking for more, and it's that creation of thought that's going to lead to more. And I think that's where we need to go.
I think in terms of commitment, spiritualism has to find a new engine to pull the old ways forward, because the engine, whatever analogy you want to apportion that to, the engine is old-fashioned and it's slow, and it doesn't work as well as some of the modern engines out there. So to look at encompassing new ways, we might have to get rid of some of the old carriages that we're towing behind us in order to be able to modernize. Keep the best of the best, but don't keep the past just because it's the past. It doesn't make sense to keep the past for the past's sake. Yes, we have a heritage. Yes, we have an incredible history that people fought and died for. But people are doing that now. They're fighting and dying now for the spirit world, for an understanding. Why do we have to wait till they're old or gone for us to actually listen to what they've got to say? It's time to move forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Before we just continue, quick hello. Lovely Matt. Good evening, Matt. Nice of you to join us. And where is it? Come on. Why is that not showing? There we go. Goodness sake. Stevie Trolland, special thoughts out to you, mate.
Yep, absolutely. With you, yes.
Yeah. And then Belinda's picking up on points from earlier on about mediums actually working together. And unfortunately, this is a very common thing. People try, and it's not really received all that well. Tessa Artist here, sort of picking up on research of NDEs, near-death experiences, is becoming more to the forefront as well. There is a lot more research into that and other areas. But sometimes I think, originally, if we go right back into history, science and religion walked hand in hand. If we look at the tenet of the Jewish religion, the restrictions there about eating cream in daylight hours, not eating pork, you can actually see why that came in, because being a hot country, these were all issues of health, and they were brought in. And because there was no schooling system, it was only through the education received in the synagogues. This is how that information was shared. So it's fair to say that, and other examples, that spirituality or religion walked hand in hand with science. But science kept becoming more and more progressive. And this is where the breakaway happened, because science was advancing and religion wasn't advancing. Because we look to the scientists, we have this empirical thought that science is going to say, yes, you live after death, it's been proven, hallelujah. But it's not. When scientists do all these papers and research into things, it's only to do what we as mediums do, present the evidence. Mm-hmm. You know, we cannot stand on the platform and prove you do not die. We can give all the evidence, but that's got to be accepted by the sitter. And it's exactly the same process with a lot of the scientific results and papers. They are presenting this evidence for review, for peer review, for people to look at and carry through and maybe carry out their own thought line, their own process there to present a paper on it. But it is fascinating. We had a gentleman on, Jamie Aylwood, a couple of years ago, and he presented a little nugget, which was quite interesting. He went through the Lancet, the scientific journal, 10 years ago, the papers mentioning spirituality were like 10. But you do a graph, and it went from 10 years ago, there was only 10, to today's world, there was something like 33,000. So it is coming in, and you do hear it. A lot of spiritualists, if you say you've got a doctrine or a scientist, oh, they only want to disprove it. It's this instant barrier that comes up sometimes.
And I think that's governed by man's understanding, or a lot of people's defense mechanisms today from them working. They're just protecting themselves. But I think there's a lot of good psychical research centres. I know I was friends with a particular gentleman from the Scottish Psychical Research Unit, and he showed us some fascinating footage and stories and proof of life after death that science had said, well, it can't be disproved what is going on here. Even where they researched not just into contacts with spirit and spirit phenomena, but also where they looked at evidential signs of ghosts. And what they discovered is it's almost like a motive of communication where they get seen repeatedly doing the same thing. They can't move past you. It's repeated energy in the atmosphere, but yet on excavation of a particular place, not for a scientific reason, but for services where water pipes had burst, they found what they saw this ghost wearing actually under the stairs, actually been built over, and they thought, oh, and everything stopped. So is it a motive? Is it a communication? Is it something? So I think science really is leading that way where it comes to spirit communication. And I think spiritualist movement needs to be more involved with those psychical research units and things, and to see what phenomena that they're recording, investigating, taking part in. And again, I think that's only an advantage to the movement, if you will, to the organizations.
I wonder if there is, I know there's always been this science and religion, and spirituality's maybe been the bridge between the two, but it seems like there might be something more to that, because you have religion, not just spiritualism, you've got every other orthodox religion out there. Then you have spirituality. So maybe it's mediumship that is a separate entity, because if we look at it, mediumship actually shows up in a lot of our orthodox religions. The religions themselves might not call it that, but when you're talking about people dying and then being seen, or you're talking about them dying and then coming back to life and there being phenomena there, when we're talking about burning bushes and experiences like all of the Orthodox religious books have in them, we can see that there's spirituality there. So what we can see is that religion needs mediumship. But does mediumship need religion? And where does spirituality come into that? So if I were just coming into this arena of developing my spiritual awareness, what's going to hook me in? Is it going to be an orthodox religion like spiritualism? Is it going to be a medium? Or is it going to be because I'm spiritually awakening and I want to find out more? For me, it's going to, the way I came into it was spiritually awakening, and the spirituality and spiritualism. Mediumship came about as a way of being able to express that spiritualism was indeed what it was. And it would be nice to see spiritualism be able to look at the spirituality part, the personal growth, the spiritual growth, and mediumship in a way that it embraces it but doesn't rely on it. Mm-hmm. As every religion has to have its structure, mediumship proves more than just that we live after. It also creates a question of, so what does happen? And I don't know if spiritualism can answer that, but a spirituality might be able to do, science might be able to do, consciousness might be able to. I don't know if one religion can, regardless of its religion. And that's where the commitment to progress should really be happening in our churches, in our ministers, in our teachers, our tutors, of mediumship, but to encompass all the others as well, and not put such a focus on mediumship.
Yeah, I think Kerry's got a really valid point there.
Yeah.
Because what we see today, because we're here to talk about commitment, we're talking about a commitment to development. Well, yes, it's a spiritual development, not just mediumship. We've got to gain compassion, understand and gain empathy. And I believe, and I'm an advocate for this, that if you're developing spiritually, you change as a person. It's impossible not to, because you're developing and understanding your perception of somebody else's life. And we reflect on that. So it changes us, changes the way that we think, changes the way that we engage with the world and how more understanding we are. So I think there's got to be something where we look at what actually is spiritualism and what is mediumship and what is spirituality. Because for me, it's an understanding of mastering self, the emotional states, mental side, the physical side of us, and gaining that understanding of how our actions interact with others and how we react with others. And it's about mastery of developing that. As you said before, in the home circle, we're sitting for an unseen world that can inspire us. And I wonder today if mediums or people developing have lost that insight that our job is to inspire people. I mean, how many mediums would be presenting today if you were only allowed to present from behind a screen? You were never seen. And I wonder how many people still will be doing that, taking themselves out of it, because we are a bridge between the two worlds. We are that empathy, we're that healing, we're that understanding, that compassion. And we have those ethics and morals. If we do our job correctly, then it changes people's lives. So it's got to be far more than just mediumship development. It's got to be the development of the medium themselves. And I think that's where we're going wrong. We need to spend more time there. The spirituality, looking at the forefront. We talk about the pioneers, and we talk about pioneers today that are leading, but we don't talk or we don't see them inspiring a nation or a country or a movement. It's just within their own little segments. I think the spirituality has to change where it can inspire the world and really bring forward peace, tranquility, understanding, compassion, because I think that's the only thing that's going to take down barriers and walls. And I don't know if it's just my own mindset, but when it comes to science, I'm there. I'm willing to stand up and to be tested as a medium. I've done it several times. And it's the only way that we can be questioned, because I think any question that comes along, skeptical or somebody being cynical, can only be a good thing as we look back, because it's changed the route of our path. So I think when it comes to commitment, we have to change the way that we think before we move forward.
Which would mean that organizations or tutors, teachers, or communities stop looking at future mediums as commodities, as things that belong to them. They're my student, they're my medium. We get to be part of their path. I don't think any organization or community or individual should ever become attached or egotistical about having an input, even if it's huge, in somebody else's journey. If we all, and I'm speaking on behalf of everybody who shares an understanding on behalf of a conscious intelligence, God, then surely we have to be looking at how we deliver that, which means in some way we need to not put the focus on self-gain and more on what are we leaving behind? What's our legacy? Is our legacy the fact that we made so much money that we can't take with us? Or is our legacy that we had an input into hundreds of individuals that have taught mediumship after us properly? You spoke about mediumship being watered down, altered states, mental mediumship, and other forms. If we keep all this knowledge to ourselves and share part of it, but not all of it, we're doing a disservice to the spirit world. We've been told we share too much with our students, but we're trying to enable them to be the tutors of the future, genuinely, and not necessarily as part of any organization. The way they speak, the way they conduct themselves, the way they interact with other mediums, the support they bring to a community, the reverence with which they treat the loved ones in the spirit world. All of that is much bigger than teaching or being the medium.
Yeah. We're all singing off the same hymn sheet. Lovely Belinda. She's saying, totally agree, Kerry. I've separated myself from teachers who've assumed ownership of me. I had the great delight of meeting Belinda, but trust me, nobody could own Belinda because she is amazing. So, yeah, lovely.
We're in Australia in March, so hopefully we might get to meet Belinda.
Oh, you never know. She's great fun. She really is. Everyone needs a Belinda in their life, I always say. But getting back to the conversation, I was just sat here going, oh, thank God it's not me.
I think it is. I think we've all got to be champions.
Not just Laurie, is it?
No, I think we've all got to be champions. We've all got to lead from our own corners, our own lanes. We have a motto: we stay in our own lane. We do what we believe is right, and we stick to that. And some of the things we hear from the community, what we do, it seems to be right and resonating with people. So we're sticking true to what we believe and sharing as much as we possibly can. Kerry was right before. We've received phone calls of people which say, well, you're telling them too much, you're sharing too much, and you shouldn't be giving them that. And it's like, well, that's our job. That's our job as teachers, as demonstrating mediums.
Responsibility to the spirit world.
Yeah. I had something similar. Through an online group that I was running, two people met and they started working together and doing quite well. Great, absolutely wonderful. And somebody said, well, don't you feel a little bit left out because you introduced them? I went, no, because that was my part. My part was to put them in the same room. What happened then is their part of it. And, I can't be any more happier for them. I just thought that was a really weird thing to say. Of course, I'm not jealous or envious. It's not me, get on with it. But I was reading a book, a Scottish medium, physical medium, Listen, My Son. Name's gone. But in that book, he was talking about...
Put it in the chat box for you.
Sorry?
Somebody might help you out by typing the name out, if they know it.
Hunter Selkirk. And in there was a description of going into a service and names being given. Not only one name, two names, very pertinent. And I just sat with the other world afterwards and went, why do we not see that level of mediumship anymore? They said, and actually Phil picked up on this earlier on, they said, we haven't changed. It's as simple as that. And I went, yeah, I get you. I absolutely get you. And I'm looking then at, are we focusing too much on the mechanics of mediumship? Are we focusing too much of this is how you link with the other world, this is how you present the evidence, this is how you dig for more, this is how you do this is how you do that, but we're leaving out the, well, what does it actually mean to you? You know, you are performing literally a miracle for some people.
Do you not feel that the truth about it's absolutely true? I do believe that there is too much focus on the mechanics, but it's the low-lying fruit. It's the easiest part that's taught. The rest of it takes time to help somebody who's spiritually evolving and growing and having wobbles and learning who they are and questioning and changing their boundaries and their values and their morals. That's a much bigger journey. Teaching mechanics of mediumship, it's really simple. And it's really simple to learn, but it's the mindset and the emotional growth that takes the time. That's the part that takes years to build on to the mechanics.
It is. And I know, Lawrence, you do some really good educational courses at Poole Church, and it's the similar reason why we do the courses that we do. We on a Wednesday, we run a mediumship mentoring group. It's open to all. But what we do is get one topic, and for those 4 to 6 weeks, we break that one topic down into bite-sized pieces, and we explain it and going through. And to give you a little bit of insight of a couple of students, one of them said just only the other day, I wish I got this years ago. And this person has been to many different places,
and lots of progressive groups.
And we said, well, this is just the basic foundation. We're going step by step by step and really introducing what it's really about, the understanding of it, not just the procedure of mechanics, but why they're happening that way.
It was looking at the mindset and consciousness, because that's what lies behind people not being able to shift their mind. And that theory of letting go of, well, if I let go of this mindset, what am I left with? And there's nobody there to help them through that journey, because everybody's teaching the mechanics. They have to go to a counselor or a coach or a therapist. What if we start, and that's something that we feel very passionate about,
Absolutely,
is there has to be a holistic view to the spiritual person, because it's the spiritual part, the soul, that is the medium. It knows what to do. It knows how to connect with spirit. It's the evolution of the human being that we need to focus on.
And that's why we do a lot of personal development courses as well, like the one we've just done, Grow Beyond Your Limits, which takes the mindset, looks at what we know, those static boundaries, and we surpass those, we move past them, and we open those doorways to new thought, new understanding of consciousness that transports new growth. And that transformational period, because if we look at mediumship, what we knew 10 years ago in our development, we're 10 years on, we should have grown, and we have. And the understandings that we have of the mechanics have grown. The healthier that we look at these and dissect them and understand them, the more that we learn. So this is something we're very passionate about, is moving people forward, not just through the mechanics, but through the personal development. Even where we've talked and looked at, we're looking at British educational standards now of personal development and mediumship, putting it together, not just by a religion, but by a governing international board that recognises the education level as that of a British standard in a university or college.
Because we've had so many individuals and people who are learning in their mediumship and people who are demonstrating their mediumship in whichever way, asking, why do you still do weekly courses when everybody else is moved to pre-recorded and you sit down and you watch? We do our weekly courses month by month, because that's how mediums in the olden days were taught. You went to a development circle, you focused on an area, you practiced, you received feedback, honest feedback. with critique and support, you then had a support network of people that you understood, and it became a way of being. It wasn't something you were trying to be. Now, online training has its place, pre-recorded, but nothing replaces the things that we experience, and probably a lot of your audience experience, was turning up and having that commitment to weekly, week after week, month after month, tuition, learning and training.
But it wasn't just mechanics, it was debate.
It's everything, yeah.
In the early days, we talk about the pioneers, they sat with each other, they discussed the contacts and looked at how they got them, and that debate that planted new seeds of growth. And so for us, this is something that's still vital today. A concept, a theory, or understanding opens the mind. It is about being committed to what we do. This whole Lyceum is based on the committed to their development. This is what we should be doing. We should be debating. We should be talking. We should be discussing the contacts, how we got certain information, how it came about, and it plants seeds in other people's minds. I used to go and watch some phenomenal mediums work. Glyn Edwards, the gentleman today, Tony Stockwell. I went and I thought, wow, how did they get that information? Then all of a sudden it was like, oh, I've got the same information. But my individual thought and understanding, as I reflected on their contacts, I then put my own understanding in and developed it even further, took it even further. So this is what we've got to do today, is have that understanding of education, not just mechanics, but talk, debate, influence, lecture, to get people's minds opening to move the static boundaries of what they think they can achieve, or what they hear their friends talking about. We need to look for new. We need to get new understanding.
And in small classes, some of the classes we've heard are enormous. They're 50 people up, which is really easy online. But our classes are no more than 12, where we're doing one-on-one. We're into breakout rooms. We're lucky we've got 2 different offices within our studio office. So we're in breakout rooms, and we're going into those breakout rooms, spending time with the individuals, offering them feedback, giving them guidance, giving them mentoring, sharing our experience, offering our input. Those classes of between 50 and 100 online, I have no idea how any tutor can get to know every individual, let alone offer one-on-one feedback.
That's really interesting, actually, Lawrence, isn't it? Because getting to know the participant, getting to understand their mindset, how they learn, how they interact, the different styles, that's important, because that can accelerate the student's development so quickly. And having an environment where everyone feels like that is very supportive. I mean, in some cases, we've got a community that cheerleads each other and pick each other up and support each other and go to DEMS. And going back to something you said before about where somebody said, do you not get jealous? We're promoting this. We've got people being introduced to churches, centres all over the world, because we want them out there. We want them in their own right. And some of these participants have had tough times in different places, but now they're excelling. Now they're getting out there. Now they're believing in themselves. That, to me, is just magic. There's nothing more inspirational than seeing these participants and students getting out there and working in their own right. That's what should be happening.
Yeah, no, I agree totally, because this was a new finding for me about looking at the development of the medium. This started in the middle of the year, and thought, this is what's missing. This is what's missing. This is definitely what's missing. Again, relating back to the pioneers. Yes, they would sit and talk. Yes, they would sit and debate. Yes, they would go and watch each other. And I say to people, you come along to a circle, so you're there an hour a week for 50 weeks of the year, if we're lucky. I said, and that equates to 4 12-hour days in a year. And that is all you're putting into your development, and you're solely focusing on the mechanics of it. I said, you've got all that other time to explore you. What does it mean to you? When you deliver a message, it's not like, yeah, I got that right. What does it actually mean? What's the underlying truth of that? Where is that healing part in it? Where is that affirmation of God, big spirit, high spirit, great spirit? There we go. There's the right word. Whatever your choice of words. And exploring that. And this is what we need to do, need to encourage with people on that developing. It doesn't matter where they're developing their mediumship, be it for public use or private use, which is wonderful, or healing or philosophical or inspired speaking. It doesn't matter. It's what does it mean? It's like cooking, isn't it? You can put together a meal from a recipe, but if you've never tasted the ingredients, it could be a bit hit and miss of when you've made that meal. But if you get to know every ingredient and go, oh yeah, I know that one. Oh yeah, I won't put too much of that in because the other one's a bit salty as well. So I need to keep that balance there. Oh, I like that. I'm going to adopt that one for the next weeks. And just learn all the ingredients. It's the same principle to our approach to mediumship. We've got to learn everything. How do we react when we come off a platform? I've seen people come down, bossed it tonight, and you just think, oh, okay, interesting. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. It's exciting as well.
It is, and I think you've hit a few nails on the head in different places there. You talked about development, sitting an hour a day, 50 weeks and 4 days. It equates to, we've talked to people that have said they're going to be a trance medium by such a date, and that date has gone by years now, and they're still not a trance medium. I spoke to them not long ago, and they said, well, I may sit once a month, and I thought, that's less than 12 hours a year. And when I voiced that to them, they went, oh, it's sort of reality hit. I mean, today we're here talking about commitment. I remember traveling the length of the country to go and sit in a regular monthly development circle, and my own circle once a week, and sit with other people in different times within that week. So it was a way of life. It's about the intention, about our integrity. For me, it's exciting because we're learning, we're understanding. And even today, where we teach some aspects, and I look at some of the aspects, and my understanding from years ago to what it is now has tripled, quadrupled, if not 10 times the understanding. So for me, we're always learning. We hear a lot of people saying, well, I've worked through that, I understand that. But when you take them back through it, they go, wow, I'm seeing it with new eyes. I've got a deeper understanding, new insight. For us, that's magic, because it shows how much they've moved forward. So I think that the more that we can sit, the more that we can put into discovering, watching other people, listening, seeing other teachers, it's all an education that keeps us moving forward. But also, going back to what you said about that medium coming off the rostrum and saying, oh, I bossed it. What happens when it goes wrong for them? What's their reason for doing it? Will their why be enough to pick themselves up again? And will they still have the passion they next go out to demonstrate or speak or do pastoral work? They'll meet it with the same energy. It's one of the big things that we look at within the development is the passion and the why. Why do you want to be a medium? Taking out to help people, to heal people, taking all the normal answers out. You've got to have a personal integrity and understanding of why you do it to keep you going. I remember the spirit world saying to me many years ago, I was developing a type of mediumship, and I remember the words clearly in my head from the voice that spoke was, we plant many seeds, but only few flowers grow. That always stuck with me, what it was about. It is about commitment, what it means to somebody to develop, and what is the purpose to develop. For me, to be recognized is not a reason. For me, it's about the passion, the lifestyle, compassion, empathy for the meaning of life and what we learn. And we're always learning, we're always taking new ideas. And it's one of the reasons we train to be ministers of the metaphysical churches, because there's such an open mindset there. They take on board every culture, every topic, and say, okay, help us understand this. And that to me is golden, because we get open mindset. Yes, we're evidential mediums. Yes, that will never change, but we're always looking at new ideas, new understandings, particular consciousness, and how that can move us forward. So as we come back to what you said there about development, sitting, and what we put into it, absolutely, we should be excited about what we're doing, not just for the class, but every waking moment in that day, in that month, in that year, in our lives.
Yeah, I agree totally. Lovely comment here from Tessa Artis, saying she did an art installation around the theme of self to help others back in 2003. Sadly, wasn't able to get funding to the tour at the time. Maybe she'll be more successful. We hope so, Tessa. We hope you can get the funding for that. And she goes on to say, I created it because of my own spiritual experiences from a young child. I was seeking answers. Now, that's really interesting, isn't it? Because we've all got questions. But we've got to be the master locksmith and be able to unlock those questions in people. Because everybody who comes to us, no matter what form, whether it's first time in a service, sit in a circle, sit in meditation group, whatever, there's always going to be those questions there, and it's providing that environment where the questions can come out, they can flow, because no question is just answered and that's the end of it. Because you give an answer or you give a thought on it and it will progress then. So that's when we start to see, like with the seeds, the flowers start to grow.
Can I ask a question then, Laurie?
You can ask whatever you like, my darling. You know I'm totally besotted by you.
Okay, that puts a different slant on it.
It does put a different slant on it, yes.
So today's theme is about commitment to spirit world, spiritualism, spiritual development, mediumship, etc., etc. You've said how that came about, that theme came about, but what's your understanding of what might need changed to get commitment kind of top of the list with people?
We live in a very different world to when I go back to what I call the old school mediums who were reared from the 40s, 50s, 60s, that generation sort of thing. But we need to realise that we're going to have an awful lot of people come to us with various neurodiversity needs, various different abilities, you know, because we can't say in today's world, well, this is the norm, because there isn't a norm nowadays. Everybody has got a slight different slant on things, and that's great. You know, in our mediumship, we encourage that individuality. So it's providing the right opportunities for a wider range of people as you can, but also understanding your own limitations and knowing the areas that you may, I'm going to struggle with that because I haven't got the sufficient knowledge, but I know somebody who I can recommend you to. Mm-hmm. So it's looking at the training side, the education side, and having that flexibility and having that openness and understanding that if I say to everybody listening tonight, a fish, everyone's going to say, oh yeah, I saw a cod, I saw a halibut, I saw a pike. You know, people will hear things differently. People will understand things differently. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So I think our approach to teaching and coaching has got to be brought up to date, to understand more about neurodiversity, to understand more about different thinking process that people have, and presentation values as well. It's really funny, Kerry, you said about old coaches, because we had a get together last night of working mediums, and somebody said, well, us lot, we like the old steam engines, because, and I'm like, well, it's the other world trying to tell me something here. But yeah, the different platforms and the way things are presented. There's people out there on TikTok now that have got thousands and thousands of followers, and presenting spirituality, but in a modern twist, a modern way. There's certainly no hint of religion there. There's no mention of churches and centres. It's just put over. And yeah, you listen to these people and you just think, ooh, I like where you're going with that, but I'm not quite sure about that avenue. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. You can't march in there and say, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. Because they're right for them. It's how we engage in that environment. Well, have you considered it in this aspect? And, tell me about your thoughts on it.
And I think when we look at spiritualism, everything that is taught is around mediumship in some way. Whether it be trance, mental mediumship, writing, art, music, physical, everything is around mediumship. But if you take the ism off and keep the spirit is about spirituality. It's about living a wholesome life. It's about understanding a holistic view to everything. And yet we don't teach that. We don't engage in personal development. We talk about it. I'm saying organizations and communities talk about personal development as in what needs to happen. But there are very, very few that actually walk the person through it. Now, I wonder what would happen if spiritualism began to look at that holistic view and began to deliver its own in-depth personal development, self-coaching, self-mentoring, not just teachers of the future, but there's an enormous gap there of qualified people who are excellent mediums in their own right, but who also have other training and understandings. I know there's a lot of tutors who have hypnotherapy qualifications, who are doctors, who are nurses, who are counselors, who are coaches, who are psychologists, and they keep the two apart. Surely spiritualism should be looking to incorporate the medical aspect in with the philosophical and science and the mediumistic element of it, for it to be that full circle, really, for it to be everything that we talk about.
Yeah, I agree. As I said, our world has changed. We can go and look at the past. We can learn certain things from the past, but we cannot live there. And when we see people pining to, why isn't it like it used to be? Why isn't it? Because the world has changed. People have changed. Ideals have changed. And it's part of our job to make the jigsaw fit nowadays. If the world was the same, we would just be following in other people's footsteps all the time and not expanding our own boundaries.
Correct. I think you referred, Lawrence, to the 40s, 50s and 60s and how it was back then. But you've got in the 70s, Estelle Roberts, that says things need to change and things are not happening as they used to be, and the mediumship's not what it used to be. But as you move through, you mentioned religion. Well, maybe it's not about religion anymore. Maybe it's about spirituality. Maybe it's about consciousness. And when people talk about mediumship, they often refer it to religion. Well, religion might need mediumship, but mediumship definitely doesn't need the religion. So you mentioned TikTok and things, but if we look at the 50s, 40s, 50s and 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, into the 2000s and the 10s and the 20s, we're actually now in a completely different social setting. Yep. The world is much faster. We've lost certain etiquettes like talking to each other. We've left those personal letters that we send, all those things, those personal interactions. And today we even talk in slang words and text abbreviated words. And even when we see spellings on text, instead of the full words, we see abbreviations. So maybe that society has moved, maybe mediumship needs to move with the times. For me, I'm going to be sorry. My opinion is it shouldn't be entertainment. It should be respected and it's something we endear, but there's got to be a new avenue. And I think personal development, the transformation of the individual, the spiritualization of the individual is probably more on point today. Even where we've talked to a lot of places that are looking at changing their centre names from a religious base, because they're saying, well, it's now, if you don't do it this way, it's incorrect. Well, that's an orthodox religion. They're wanting more. They're wanting something that reaches the younger people of today that resonates with them. And what Kerry said about holistic avenues, more people are looking at today. And I think that's where spirituality needs to move towards, and mediumship.
Can I be a little bit controversial?
Yes, because that'll save me and Lawrence.
I wonder what would have happened had we're talking about spiritualism moving forward and the movement actually moving in the right direction. I wonder whether, and it's more of a question than a statement, I suppose, is had spiritualism, not just the huge organizations around the world, but the people who are who identify as being spiritualists, if at something like the pandemic, March 2020, if there had been less resistance to being able to reach a larger audience. Now, it's all speculation and with hindsight, and we'll never know. I understand that. But instead of the people that were almost trained, but not quite, almost ready to demonstrate, but not quite, instead of them going on to online, I wonder why the spiritualist organizations didn't get on board. We were called blasphemous for being online within 1 week of online.
That was polite.
We were was blasphemy, disrespectful to the spirit world. It will never work. Here we are, 5 years on, almost, and there's more online training, demonstrations, and divine services than there is face-to-face. There's more online churches growing. And the face-to-face churches are diminishing. I wonder, had spiritualism seized the moment and not resisted and closed everything down, whether we wouldn't be at where we are now with 10 million and growing poorly trained mediums out there. We could have still had a movement that was representing an excellent standard of mediumship. And if we haven't learned something from that, surely we should be looking now, okay, so how is the landscape changing? How do we need to adapt? What we know is one person can't change everything else. It has to move. One religion can't change the viewpoint or the modern change that's happening in society. It has to shift. It has to modernize. And if we haven't learned by now that we need to modernize, surely hollering on the old and the history and not really looking at, so how can we make this new and relevant? It's another missed opportunity.
No.
It's an opinion and not a statement.
Yeah.
Maybe. Me and Lawrence are clear.
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly. The sad fact of life now is that physical churches and centres are finding it a very hard time. Whether you own your own building, such as we do here, or if you're renting premises, it is very, very hard because everything has gone up. And we've had to shift and change things and bring in new people. And, you know, the greatest of respect, bring in people of today's world who going out and spending £4.50 on a cup of coffee is norm, rather than keeping it to one specific area of people who have been putting up, you know, and again, the greatest of respect, putting £1 in the collection plate since 1970.
They're putting in £1 and then taking out 50p.
They're putting in £1, then wanting a free coffee, want free parking, want loo paper. For God's sake, I mean...
Don't know what you're talking about, Lawrence.
But yeah, and it is going to be a very, very decisive time for people, and it is going to... We don't like change. Human beings, we do not like change at all. We accept that as a fact. But we have to grow. We have to evolve. We have to try different things. You know, Paul, we do things differently. Some people love it. Some people are not very keen on it. That's absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine. But, you know, if somebody isn't out there doing new stuff, trying new things, and the wonderful thing is you see then, or the language is starting to get used in other places, and you just go, yeah, that's great. That's
Absolutely. Great. I think what Kerry said there, and she reminded me of a few incidents where we were really chastised right at the beginning of the COVID period being online. But the same people that basically had a really good go at us within months, within the first 12 months, then rung us up and said, how do you do this? Is it just like doing that? And we went, yeah. And I thought, and part of us was like smiling because we thought it's moving. It's now catching.
But it was a missed opportunity of everybody.
It was a huge
had spoken with everybody and said, we found that this works. And if you use this and not that, and if you do this and that type, then spiritualism might have been the most favored religion out there because it would have used the platform and got a platform unlike any other. It already has, mediumship has, spirituality has, but spiritualism hasn't, and that's a great shame. It needs to modernize and use the platforms that are there. There's a lot of people out there that are unhappy or are grieving. Or are sad, that will gain a lot from being able to attend a community where everybody embraces emotionally and spiritually everybody else. That's one of the fundamental benefits of being part of a spiritualist community.
I mean, we're coming up to, I think it's our 5th year on the Sunday service that we do, but it's been 6 years online because we were doing them back in 2019, raising money for children's charities, streaming theatre events across the world. We realized that it could reach new people, new audiences. And over the last 5 years on the Sunday service, the gathering that we do, and we've been the main mediums for that for the bulk of the time, we've reached new people that have never heard of spiritualism, and where people have said, I would never go in a church, have come online. And now they're regular, and we're holding anything between 180 and 200 people a week on that Sunday service because we've reached people. Now, again, what Kerry said, spiritualism could have done the same and reached out to a massive audience. I think at one time we had 21 different countries around the world, 20-odd thousand people watching every week, the recordings and things. It's a massive opening that could have transported mediumship and spirit world into everybody's lives. It's one of the reasons.
It's never too late.
It's never too late, and it's one of the reasons we agreed to make the documentary where the film crew followed us around over the last couple of years. And we're not saying we're the best mediums, but we do practice what we preach, and we do believe in what we do. And it's a case of we're trying to educate people, trying to bring spirituality, mediumship, spiritualism to a massive audience. And I think it's today's society, because today is a faster world. It's a technology, a world full of technology that people communicate through, and we're looking at that. We've brought out our own app as well as websites and stuff. It's about staying relevant
without losing the integrity,
and meeting the needs of today. I think that's probably the key thing of the whole discussion about commitment, is meeting the needs of people today.
Yeah. The late great Jean Bassett said in a talk at the turn of the century. That's scary, isn't it? And she questioned, saying about when the rallies used to be held, when the Royal Albert Hall and the Manchester, I think it's the Playhouse they used to have up there, and all these great gatherings of spiritualists there, not to see a demonstration of mediumship, but to hear other people talking. And she said, what happened? Where have those people gone? And she said, well, the truth of the matter is they haven't gone anywhere, but we've stopped giving them something worthwhile to listen to.
Correct.
Yeah, and that was very, very poignant. Got a comment here from the lovely Angela Devine. And going back when you were saying about hypnotherapists and amalgamating the two with the mediumship. And she's saying here, as a nurse myself, there are issues now about the risk of litigation. So far as if I were to stop to help at an accident, I would not mention my profession to protect myself. Incorporating this into spiritualism, my question would be, could this risk my professional accountability?
It's an excellent point. Mm-hmm. And what we have to be aware of as part of the training, we have to naturally be aware of, as a medium, we already have a responsibility. We already have what could be called the upper hand. Because if somebody goes to a medium or a psychic, they're already probably a little bit lost on their journey. They're already open to being led or directed or guided. They're already looking for answers that doesn't come from themselves. So as a practitioner, a spiritual practitioner, we have to know the boundaries of our ability and be very clear about what we're offering. It already happens. We were speaking, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, it doesn't matter, in November, so however long that was, last month, that's easier, to a lady in Europe, not in the UK, who said her reading sometimes went on for over an hour when a half hour had been booked, and an hour and 40 minutes where an hour had been booked. And I said to her, what on earth are you doing? Well, I do a bit of coaching, I do a bit of counselling, I do a bit of mentoring, I then do a bit of psychic reading and a bit of mediumship reading, and then I do a bit of listening, I do a little bit of pastoral services. I said, but that person didn't turn up for all that. That's your need that's being met.
Trying to please people.
So we have to look at people's intention of why are they feeling that they need to do the bells and whistles, but also where we are, if we are a trained psychotherapist, psychiatrist, coach is slightly different because it's not a regulated profession. Anybody can, within the realms of coaching, call themselves a coach. Counselling and psychotherapy, different, obviously, nursing and doctoring. But what we need to make very clear is mediumship and psychicism is about empowering. So the minute we get into a telling or a guiding or a giving advice, we've overstepped the mark of where psychicism and mediumship is. So in personal development is all about empowering. So if we were to say, how did that feel for you hearing yourself say that statement? In no way are we offering advice. We're asking the person to reflect. As tutors, we have to be very clear for the people who develop their mediumship with us that we are there. And if we are not able to cope in any given area, that we know the people we can signpost to,
Yep.
or the appropriate professional that they need. Not saying I advocate giving specific names, but the appropriate service that they need to seek out. We're not saying that we are the correct person to see somebody through that personal development process, but we also trust that the person has it within themselves to work through it. They might wobble, they might kick and scream, they might point the finger at Phil and I and say, "You're rubbish teachers." Often it's because we haven't rescued them in the way that they wanted rescued, and actually they didn't want the struggle of doing it for themselves. So I absolutely agree. It needs somebody who is well experienced at managing people through without overly rescuing and assisting, but not leaving them in the lurch. And that's what we've seen probably within the last 3 weeks. We've had 4 people come to us that have been destroyed emotionally and their mediumship by the can being opened. You cannot open a can of worms without the time to help that person work through packing it all back in. And that's what's missing. We can talk it, but we need the time and the dedication and commitment to seeing it through with that person, which is why we see everybody we work with as an individual. One size does not fit all.
We bring a lot of our coaching accreditations into our work because we want to provide an environment that we are supportive, but also we want to not just support them, but guide them as well, creating questions within them to really understand that self-learning, as somebody's quite right.
Yep, encourage self-directed learning.
Yeah, correct, exactly. But also we want to challenge it as well. Those 3 aspects are really important, because if we can just say, well, what's that really about? What's really going on here? And they start to question and delve a little bit deeper. We're experts in that field, but we're also experts in that ethical field as well. We know where our boundaries are, where our limits are. And as Kerry said, we can then direct them. Have you ever thought about X, Y, and Z? They might be able to help you that little bit better in a completely different medical field. So knowing the limitations, knowing the boundaries and the ethics and the morals of everything, then we can start to signpost people to certain professionals of medicines and other things. Then we can start having that healthy understanding. But understanding each one as that individual, as Kerry said, is really important, because we get to understand how their mind is, how they think, how they react. Even the simple task of listening has many different levels within it. So being able to reach somebody with the right kind of tutorial, understanding, method and technical area is really vital in somebody's development.
And it's knowing the individual to know when we need to step in.
Correct.
And do a little bit of hand holding, and when we actually need to stand and be with that person, but allow them to work through and not hurry them. It is a skill set, and it can't be taught. It has to be experiential learning.
Yeah.
And everybody has to learn at their own pace. But we always have this area where we start, and was it Diane or Angela?
Angela.
Angela said self-directed learning. We always allow that to be first and foremost in what we say. You will get out what you put in. If you make this like any other course, you turn up, you put the notebook at the bottom of the cupboard, and you only see it when you move house or you clear out. That isn't self-directed learning. It's like any document. It needs to be updated and revisited and learned and journaled and understood.
They have to be accountable for the work that they're participating in. It's not just, oh, we've got a class, let's do it, then afterwards drop it, forget it. It's that self-learning. You know as well as us, Lawrence, when we do a service, a private reading, it's not just over with. that power's still with you afterwards. And as a reflective medium, I go, what could I have done better? What did I learn from that? How did that strike a chord with myself? And we learn from it. And it's that understanding that we gain and take into the next and the next and the next. It's about that self-learning process that we have to be accountable for.
Yeah, so true. I do. It sends a bit of a shiver through me when you see so many posts about guidance and advice, and I'm just like, is this guidance and advice, or is this just your opinion veiled as something else? I'm always very, very wary of that statement. But anyway, what a lovely evening. Thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody that's paid attention and listened, and
for nearly 2 hours.
And
yeah, hour and a half.
Maybe something that has been spoken will generate a thought, and that thought will grow into something that will form part of your own beliefs and understanding at some point in the future.
Absolutely.
Definitely. So thank you both, Bill and Kerry. Thank you. Next week, I shan't be here next week because I shall be working for our friends in Holland for their Christmas service. And then it's Christmas, so very early, but have a wonderful Christmas, everybody, all our regular listeners. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful time. Don't forget, you can still keep up with us online by watching the services. So that's Sunday morning. So that's this week and next week. And we will be going live with our service on Christmas Eve as well. So you can keep in touch that way. But in the meantime, have a great time. Phil, Kerry, have an absolute blast up in Scotland. I'm so envious. I need to get back up there. I need it now.
Visit, isn't it? But we'll get there. We've still got plenty of work to do over Christmas. It's that time of year, as we were discussing before. There's a big need out there, so we don't stop. We carry on working, demonstrating pastoral services.
Yeah, it's good to hear. So have a wonderful evening, everybody, and a very good night and a peaceful night to you all.